Please welcome President, SANS Technology Institute College, Ed Skodis.
Hello, welcome to the SANS panel at RSA Conference 2024. This is my favorite panel of the year because we get to hear from real experts about what's really going on in the wild and what we can do about it to make our organizations more safe and secure. Now, as we kick off this panel, I have three numbers that I'd like you to think about. They're 35, 25, and 15. The SANS Institute was founded 35 years ago. It's SANS's 35th birthday. And thank you. It was founded as an information sharing and collaboration community to understand what's happening in cyberspace and how we can collaborate together as a community to defend it. That is our mission and our goal. 25 years ago, SANS formed the Internet Storm Center. This was a volunteer organization of collaborative incident handlers, keeping an eye on what's happening with attacks against the internet 24/7 by 365. It was founded by Dr. Johannes Ulrich. 35, 25, and now 15. For the last 15 years, we've been offering this SANS panel on the top 5 most dangerous attacks that you need to be aware about here at the RSA conference. So 15 years of this panel. This panel gathers together the processes, the ideas, the defenses, the experiences of the SANS community. We take ideas here from SANS authors, from instructors, and especially from our students. Also, the curriculum leads are intimately involved in putting together this panel. Through input from courses, from summits, from interactions at RSA Conference, and many other places, the Internet Storm Center as well, we pull together ideas and real data to analyze what the top 5 attack vectors are that you need to know about. And this year's RSA Conference theme, as you know, is the art of possible. My favorite part of this panel is that not only will we talk about different attacks, but we will talk about the art of the possible defenses for each one. Whenever I watch this panel, I always take detailed notes because there's so many new ideas shared by our panelists. And I really am going to focus on what is possible to defend against these attacks. Our panelists are going to share practical tips on all kinds of things. The way this is organized is going to be 6-minute presentations from each of our 4 panelists, followed by a Q&A section where we'll interact with each other. So let's please welcome onto the stage our panelists. The first is our Dean of Research at the SANS Technology Institute College, Dr. Johannes Ulrich. We also have our DFIR Curriculum Lead from the SANS Institute and Senior Director of Celebrate, that's Heather Barnhart. We have SANS Certified Instructor with the SANS Institute and a Security Engineer with AWS, Terrence Williams. And last but certainly not least, we have Offensive Operations Curriculum Lead from SANS and a Fellow with the SANS Institute, Stephen Sims. So I'd like to give you a little more detailed introduction of each of our great panelists. Thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to see you guys again. So, Johannes is Dr. Johannes Ulrich. He is the founder of dshield.org. That was the first and longest running global sensor network detecting current attacks with tens of thousands of sensors. He's also the director of the Internet Storm Center with over 40 volunteer handlers keeping an eye on what's happening on the internet and pushing out a daily diary. And finally, he's the Dean of Research at the SANS.edu College, where he supports over 2,000 college students in selecting research topics and furthering the domain of knowledge of cyber attacks and defenses. We also have Heather Barnhart. She is a Senior Director of Community Engagement at Celebrate. She works with global organizations, including law enforcement, consulting firms, government agencies, and the military on mobile device forensics. She's a SANS Faculty Fellow. She's an author, DFIR Curriculum Lead, and an amazing person. She's a researcher, an author, a Capture the Flag creator. Is there anything you don't do? And she's also a social media contributor who does great stuff for the cybersecurity community. Great to have you here. Also, first time on the panel this year, we have Terrence Williams. He is a security engineer with experience in military and really, really big tech environments. Check this out. He has helped to safeguard the integrity of Meta's family of applications during global elections from the period of 2020 to 2022, ensuring the protection of billions of users worldwide. He's a SANS certified instructor, and he specializes in digital forensics and incident response. Welcome, Terrence. And then finally, Steve Sims, our offensive operations curriculum lead and fellow with the SANS Institute. He's a community contributor, the co-author of a book on gray hat hacking. He's a host of a great weekly podcast that gets really in-depth technically. It's called the Off by One Security Podcast with a great YouTube channel as well. And he's a security researcher who really has found a lot of vulnerabilities in some of the most widely used applications on the net today, including web browsers, the Windows kernel, point-of-sale devices, and countless other systems. So let's welcome our panel here. And we will turn it over to Dr. Johannes Ulrich.
Thank you, Ed, for getting me started here with such a great introduction. Thanks, everybody, for coming again to this year's panel. Now, what I want to start with today is something that doesn't sound new at first. It's the security impact of technical debt that you acquire sort of over the years. I cover this topic here for two reasons. One, because I think we're a little bit at an inflection point here. And secondly, because it affects more and more not just our enterprise applications, but our security stack. And if you look at how applications are developed, anybody here in the room who still remembers Perl and great language, 80% of all random ink spots can be parsed as valid Perl. So great language. He wrote a lot of code in that, sort of 2000 to 2010. And then, of course, .NET came along. We now have Python, that's what the kids like these days, and Rust, for some of its memory safety issues. And then, of course, any enterprise knows that you have that dark night of enterprise software, an Excel macro that ties it all together. But again, what I want to focus on is where the vulnerabilities that arise from this. How many people do you still have around that do speak Perl, that understand that old code? So a lot of retirements really hitting sort of right now, and that's sort of where we see a lot of these software stacks kind of starting to become fragile, showing their cracks, and starting to collapse in some way. Here I looked at two security products, and I'm not naming any vendors because these were just the two that I had easiest access to. And you sort of see how different vendors deal with it. Both of these products have been around for a while, like the one since 1998, depending on the copyright notices in the code. And I only looked at the custom code, not at any libraries or such. The other one, 2002. But look at that, CentOS 6.4. Hasn't been supported in quite a while. And then you sort of see that stack of languages, Perl, Python, Java, all of that being stagnant. You won't find one developer that really understands them all and is now able, for example, to quickly write a patch for a new vulnerability. So how are you going to fix this? Well, if you're writing software like this, then of course you really have to bite a bullet and start working on it. You can't delay it any further. But I think what this also speaks to more than anything else is something that I always keep saying about patching and developing and maintaining software in general. Apply patches incrementally as they're being released. There's sort of a little bit of resistance among developers. And as a developer myself, I feel this where you say, hey, this new version of the library, it doesn't really have any new features, doesn't fix any security vulnerabilities. I'm not going to apply that. The problem is 5 years from now, after you skipped 10, 15 different incremental updates, then the big security vulnerability hits in that library, and now you have to work through all of these little quirks that sort of got added over the years. So that's sort of one way how you can fix it. And of course, documentation is always fine, but good luck getting your developers to actually do that. The second topic that I have is related a little bit to AI. How do you actually identify someone in the current threat environment? Like, we now have fake videos being used in order to impersonate people, fake audio being used. And really, the game changer is not the quality. The game changer is the cost. How much cheaper it has become to do this. You could always do it, but it was pretty expensive. Now it's a couple dollars versus tens of thousands of dollars to create one of those fakes. So how do you actually know who you're talking to online? And this has always been a problem. Like, this quote here from Peter Steiner comes from 1993. And it's ever more valid today. Also, a lot of the techniques, the technologies that we used to actually verify humans, like famous CAPTCHAs. Well, for the last 5+ years, I've seen papers about how machine learning is actually better than humans. Humans are just not human enough if they're trying to prove humans. So how do you establish it? How do you establish that? You really have to split it into two parts. One is the initial identification. How do you sort of hand out an identity to an entity online? That's where you have to spend the money, where you have to spend the time to get that right. And then solid incremental authentication as that user comes back to you. Of course, you have then to deal with regulatory requirements, like know your customer. This is an image from onlyfakes.com, a website that not only creates fake IDs, it creates pictures that look realistic of IDs. And it has as a background like a carpet or a piece of wood that sort of looks like someone took that picture in their home. And this has already been used to impersonate an established identity online with some financial systems. The other problem, of course, you have as you're becoming too intrusive in actually establishing an identity is, well, customers don't like it. IRS had some big backslash when they tried to use ID.me with a fairly stringent system to actually establish identity of users. And of course, they had a huge problem with a fraud if you ever filed your tax and they claimed someone already did it for you. So what you really need to figure out is how much effort do you have to spend. So that risk-based identity, that will be probably the hardest thing to define coming up. How likely is it to have one of these breaches? How are you establishing? How critical is it to actually establish the identity of this particular individual? Anyway, that's it from me, and I'll hand it now over to Heather, who has a great topic coming up here.
Thank you. Good job, Johannes. Hello, everyone. I am back with an edgy topic. So each year I come up here and I try to just kind of wreck your brain in a different way, and that's probably what this topic is going to do, because it's the edgy threat that nobody wants to admit exists, and it's sextortion. And it is running wild, and it is getting to be out of control. So when we look at the threat, how real is it? If I asked you, and I'm not asking for the record, but if I asked you to raise your hand if you knew a human who had an image released of them without their own will, without them wanting it, and then it was used to terrorize them, to sextort them for financial information, or just to play revenge, I guarantee a huge chunk of this room will raise their hand. It is on a growing trend. Since February, I have probably been asked at least 5 to 10 times a week how to help law enforcement, how to help parents, how to help our customers at Celebrate or students at SANS on what to do to protect themselves against sextortion. So think about the Taylor Swift deepfakes. I feel like when that happened, it blew up, and everyone became aware that they could do this, but people also realized it could happen to anyone. When you see an image, whether it's real or not, it can't go away. We can't just make it go away. It's one of those things when your eye sees it, it's in your mind. So here are some trends that we're seeing. FBI warning about targeting teen boys in Philadelphia. Here we have where a man says that he was sextorted by someone he thought he was dating. So the romance scams are really big. There is actual training on social media on how to successfully sextort someone, which is extremely disturbing. President Biden signed the REPORT Act today, forcing social media to report CSAM and child trafficking. So this is actually going to help. We have more with sextortion of teens. It's on a growing trend. And then finally, obviously you can see here where it's teen girls, teen boys. But in reality, it could be you, it could be me, it could be our children, it could be one of your coworkers. Now think about this. If it's one of your coworkers, what does that mean for your organization? If an image is posed, whether it's AI or not, against you, and they're saying, I'm going to put this on LinkedIn, it's going on your company's website, it's going to get blasted out on YouTube, it's going everywhere unless you provide me X. People are going to consider providing X, and that's a scary thing. In reality, boys ages 10 to 14 are the greatest target right now. Apparently, they respond to the financial threats. Sadly, the suicide rate is increasing. Now, how does this happen? You become a target. This could be random. This could be an ex. It could be an enemy of yours wanting to take you down. It could also be a victim who is required, when you go through this whole loop, to provide other potential victims. Give me names of your friends, or I'm releasing this picture to your principal. Give me names of your friends, or your entire hockey team is getting this photo of you. It is awful, and this is how it happens. And then the grooming occurs. So typically what will occur is they will form a relationship with you, whether it's threatening or friendly. They will make you think that they are someone they're not. So recently there was a 17-year-old boy who committed suicide because there were 2 teenagers in Nigeria pretending to be a female that he fell in love with. He provided a video, a photo, and then it was blasted out about him. So this is what occurs. But what happens if you never provide that video? What if you're smarter than that and you're not going to do it? Guess what? It can be created on your behalf. So you heard Johannes just talk about AI. We have heard so much about this. AI deepfakes are real, and they're very easy to create, especially for all of us in this field. If you think about security, we're on YouTube, we're doing podcasts, we're speaking at events like this. You can easily learn someone's face and do whatever you want with those images. So the person may not have even provided something, and they still go through these trends. The issue is the threat of sharing, or that attacker gets control. So do you work with them, or do you not? And this is one of the things where people say, don't pay the financial thing, just deal with it. But again, when people see that image, will they ever see you the same way again? So it's a major, major issue that we're facing. When we look at this photo here, clearly everyone wants to keep their kids safe. We know that. But we all deserve to be safe. Your organizations deserve to be safe. Most attacks happen at home. This is where kids and adults, you're comfortable. You're in your own environment. You're in your bedrooms. You're talking to people. Think about that. So a lot of people, they're like, I'm not getting my kid a smartphone. I'm not doing this thing because they're a threat. It could happen to that young boy on the floor on his iPad. It could happen to the dad on his computer. So this is where you really have to think about it can happen to anyone. To prevent this, you need to be aware. We do security awareness training all the time. We train on phishing repeatedly. I get so many emails that celebrate training me, training me. Why don't we train on extortion? It doesn't have to be sexual in nature, but extortion. Why aren't we trying to see if someone would actually provide some kind of information? As I learned in the 1980s, don't talk to strangers. Why do we do this? Johannes was just saying, we don't validate anyone. We all talk to people through our professional networks. You need to do security checks and consider your privacy settings. If something feels weird, tell someone. This is like talks you give to kids, you have to give it to adults too. But we need to understand technology and not fear it. Now, worst case scenario, if it happens to you, you need to remember and also remind children they may not have done anything wrong. Even if they did provide an image that was provocative in nature, you need to help them get out of it. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has something called Take It Down. Well, they will go and immediately remove any photo or video, AR or not. There's support lines there. There is the Report Act and Defiance Act that I just mentioned, helping legislation deal with these issues. But the final thing that I want everyone to think about, a photo can ruin your life, whether it's real or not. Terrence.
All right, thank you, Heather. Between yourself and Johannes, I have some shoes to fill here. We're going to talk about what does AI look like in the world of the 2024 election. So hashtag thank you 2024 for giving us this blessing of the Gen AI plus an election. You know how well we handle those things. So we need to understand what we're coming up against. Right now, we have to balance between innovation, so making sure that we can build, accelerate, make discoveries that we did not know before, the security of it, where we're all here today, and then the trust. That is where the elections are going to come down to, is how do we maintain this trust? Similar to the past, every time new technology comes out, there's going to be an election that is going to see the technology boom. We saw it in 2008, we saw it in 2016, 2020. Now, 2024, can we learn from the same things we saw before? Of course, do not get me wrong, cutting edge. This is going to open doors for us. We've seen political parties already quickly generate different ad campaigns. They are better targeting. But on the same side, what we learned from the boom with social media is that efficiency of that targeting we became so good at is now on the forefront again. So what do we do with a technology that is providing so much benefit, but also can have a negative side effect that can erode the trust? Trust is very hard. I want you to think about this. Is there a time where someone told you a little fib? They said, hey, you can trust me. You go back, find out, they couldn't. And you're like, oh my gosh, I will never believe anything you ever say again. That is our current landscape. We're here now with the deep fakes. We're here with the robocalls. There's going to be many efforts that are coming up that are saying, please look right when everything is happening left. This is going to be the noise in our case. Does that mean we should ignore deep fakes and all the negatives? No. But here we got to focus on the security. As Dr. Johannes pointed out, the security is going to be around our backlogs. So AI is making our adversaries that much more lethal. They don't have to wait months to be able to discover the different vulnerabilities. They can figure it out within days and weeks now. We are already seeing unprecedented breaches across the board, and this is before the boom. So what can we see now? How do we respond? It is going to be on our shoulders to say, let's go clean up that tech debt, because when someone finds that vulnerability and they can move faster and they can scale more efficiently, and we're sitting back on the sideline saying, well, when the technology's safe enough, I'm going to use it. Okay, well, while we sit back and wait, our attackers are going to use it, and they're going to be really good at it. There is something to be said on how they're always teaching us those lessons. Collaboration is going to be key. Remember in the past, we've seen the tech companies go in one direction, the political parties go in one direction, academia go in one direction. The positives now, everyone's trending right directions right now. We have our academia looking into research, seeing how they could develop something that is detecting if an image or video is generated. Hopefully that is going to be available in time for tech companies who are doing the innovation, who are unlocking these new possibilities to integrate it to ensure that when they roll out their new solutions, there's going to be some type of safety nets that we can rely on as citizens. There was the tech accords. The tech companies came together, said, we're going to do our job. We're going to work together. We're going to make sure this is done. And then we've seen so much legislation come out at the federal and the state level. So we do see that this collaboration is happening, and the collaboration is going to be good. On the other hand, we also have to understand how the technology does not discriminate. It is going to take that information and go and reproduce it. We're going to be more efficient. We're going to have more targeted ads. We're going to be able to have those targeted attacks that are going straight for our infrastructure. There's going to be these grassroots foundations that are keeping us honest. Grassroots foundations are that voice for us, because all this comes down to the accountability we need to ensure at the levels of the tech companies, the politicians, and the academia saying, hey, I know y'all are doing good, but is it good enough? Does this allow us to still innovate? Does this allow us to still unlock possibilities, but also keep us safe? Because without trust, similar to that little fib, that deep fake is just eroding it. The next breach, someone's going to say, well, I can't trust you. We can't lose that. That is going to be one of the most beneficial mindsets to have as we're looking at this upcoming election, where people are going to say, can I trust that my vote will be cast properly? And if we're allowing the breaches because we didn't go back to the tech debt like Dr. Johannes provided us, we are going to fall short. That is not what we want. So let's learn from the past. So the past has already shown us what happens when elections are tied with new technology. The new shiny toy does take over. We need to prioritize the innovation. Oh, trust me, I want the next version, because my homework has been so perfect now. And we need to make sure our security is great to ensure that we are maintaining the trust, but we need to hold everyone responsible, understand the accountability that we need to ensure is there to make sure that our elections and this technology can grow. So, to further on, hand it over to Stephen.
Thank you, Terrence. Great, thank you. So talking about the biggest threats is a very subjective area, and we've all been working very hard on looking on what's going on now and what's coming in the future to determine exactly what those might be. My big focus is on offensive capabilities and how automation and AI is a force multiplier. So if you know me at all or have seen any talks I've done, presentations before, I'm very, very much into exploit development. So vulnerability research, exploit development, the more technical, the better for me. What you see on the screen right now is something called Shell GPT, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. It is a great tool that, say for example, like take myself. I'm not good at web application hacking. It's just not my thing. But I know how to do it. So I might not remember what a SQL query needs to look like in a certain situation, if it's MySQL versus some other. So I can ask Shell GPT, hey, can you produce this for me? And it does things like that very, very well. It empowers you very, very much. And I'm not going to go through everything here on the slide, but these are a lot of the things that folks working in the offensive space are leveraging AI for. Now, there's adversarial AI and offensive AI. Those are newer terms, but most of us consider adversarial AI to be attacking the LLMs, the algorithms, and we consider offensive AI to be using AI as an aid to better enable us to be attackers. So DARPA, this will be a quick one. Back in 2016, just to show you how long people have been thinking about this, AI is nothing new. It's been out for a very long time, and I remember at an RSA keynote in Singapore back in 2019, one of my co-speakers, Meenop Win, she spoke about AI in security. So back in 2016, DARPA came out with a challenge, and they challenged, I think, primarily universities and said, we want you to develop a system or a bunch of machines, basically, that are able to identify vulnerabilities in other machines and applications, as well as being able to automate the patching process, as well as being able to automate the weaponization, which is amazing. And back then, it was neat. You saw like some basic attack types like buffer overflows have been around forever. It could do basic buffer overflows and weaponization of those types of bugs, but it still had a lot of work to do, of course. So this slide, I don't expect you to read all of this. I put it up there so later on, if you look back at this slide, you can go through it in more detail. But real quickly to summarize, what is the threat? I said that at first, which is, again, the automation of offensive capabilities and how AI is a force multiplier. When I look back at how me personally or others in the security research space do bug hunting and vulnerability research in general, we're reverse engineering, we're fuzzing, we're doing static analysis, code analysis, we're using all these techniques, and we use automation when we can, but it's not always possible. When it is, great. So then bring in AI, and now we've got a lot more intelligence built into this. You see, the only word up there that's been highlighted is speed, because that's the big threat. The speed at which we can now discover vulnerabilities and weaponize them is extremely fast, and it's getting faster. And you saw the quote up there from Elon Musk as well. So there was a paper that came out, I think about a month ago now, and it said LLM agents can autonomously exploit one-day vulnerabilities. So to me, when I heard one-day vulnerabilities, I think about the process of Microsoft patches coming out. We run a differential between the patched version of a file and the unpatched version, and we try and weaponize it as quickly as possible. We used to call this one-day or n-day exploitation, because the faster we can get this out there, then the more useful it's going to be, because most organizations aren't good about patching. What they were referring to in this paper is web app vulnerabilities. So it said in the paper that if a CVE comes out, all we need to do, our agents, consume the CVE information about the vulnerability, and we're able to weaponize that and exploit the targets. There was no code or transparency in the paper, so what most of us took from that is it was more like a glorified search engine that was able to go out, fetch exploit code, and then weaponize. So binary exploitation That's what I was talking about a little bit ago with patch diffing. We can automate the patch diffing process. We can use tons of data. We can use RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, where we can take in threat intel from PDF documents and other sources, and then we can compare it to all the thousands of vulnerabilities that have been discovered over the years and weaponize them and be much more effective. So this is what's coming. It's the passing from one agent to the next, and we're able to automate the diffing, the weaponization, the generation of the virtual machines, all of that technical stuff that would normally take us so long to do manually. So that's what's coming, is what I just described, the automation of finding complex bugs and then exploiting the targets. So if you're a defender, this is the big takeaway, 2 slides. How are you going to be able to defend against this speed that we're up against, and the automation and the intelligence that's just going to get better and better? We're still needed, meaning researchers. Someone still needs to be there to groom the vulnerability and the exploit and get the whole thing to work. We're not there yet. I don't know if we'll ever get great at that, but we're going to get better. So luckily, I think I'm still needed for now, I hope, at least for a couple more years. But from the defensive perspective, we leverage the same thing. Eric Van Boogenhout and I, the other day, did a presentation on automation of purple teaming and pen testing and red teaming, and how we can create basically a loop that says, let's instrument the environment, let's take this threat intel reports, let's take all this documentation, let's generate Yara rules or Sigma rules. We can do the same style of automation on the defensive side, but at some point you can see where this is going. The blue and the red are going to be going at it against each other while we're kind of watching. So I think that's what we should be focusing a lot of our time on, and getting better on the defensive side especially. So back to Ed.
Thank you, Steve. Wow. So that's it, huh? My goodness. Thank you for sharing all that stuff. I have questions. Questions from the community I'd like to ask you. So we'll start out with Johannes. Let's get real practical. You know, organizations here are purchasing critical information security products, or maybe they already have them deployed. How can they determine if their product suffers from tech debt and if this is a concern for them?
Yeah, so a good indicator, if not the ultimate proof, is how did this vendor over the last 1 or 2 years deal with vulnerabilities? Was the mitigation advice they provided on point, or did they have to update it day after day because they probably didn't quite themselves understand the vulnerability because they don't really have anybody on staff anymore who understands that vulnerable code? That's, I think, sort of a quick spot, but you can also, of course, ask for pen test reports. Ask the vendor, how are they dealing with that tech debt, in particular if it's an older product that has been around for a while. Newer products are actually not free of it either. They are sometimes just sort of rebranded old products and include a lot of that same old code.
It's an excellent point. So just because it says it's new doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't have old stuff in it.
Correct. It's now new with 30% less vulnerabilities, hopefully.
Thank you. That's right. So Heather, very, very disturbing stuff. Could you, reiterate and really emphasize some points about how we can protect kids from this threat? I mean, it's bad stuff. You're going through your presentation. It's breaking my heart. It's bad stuff.
This is one of those things, do you have an hour? We could sit here forever and talk about this. We would probably need a drink to ease it a little bit. I promise to write a blog on this next week because there are so many tips that I really do want to educate people on. But the big thing is you have to educate yourself on how to talk to your children, and you have to actually do it. And this is where it's hard. My son and I, he's 10. We had a conversation last week accidentally because he thinks Mike Tyson is following him on Snapchat. And this blows my mind. And I realized, oh my gosh, he'll do anything for Mike Tyson to follow him, which terrifies me. So they may be too young to talk to. But something that will really educate you that you could do today, it will take about 8 minutes of your time. It's a video. And you need to go to noescaperoom.org. So just think about escape room, but there's no escape. And it's an interactive video for parents to learn how easily it is for kids to become sextorted. And it's awful, but it's worth your time. So noescaperoom.org will get you started.
I watched that video. It was haunting. Really scary stuff. It's important to know this stuff. You know, Terrence, the topic you covered, I think, has some of the biggest implications of all, really. So, but when it comes to the average voter, how can we talk to the average voter, educate the average voter, to let them know concerns associated with AI, deepfakes, and so forth What do they need to understand?
Yes, average voter needs to understand that we're in a time of trust but verify. So you will get your own individualized feeds, you will get your news from different sources than your peers, but it is your responsibility to go back to the platforms and ask, is this true? Is it fact checked? There are multiple platforms, search engines that are rolling out their verification process in an experimental phase right now, but the way we hold the innovators and the politicians and the researchers accountable is being able to say, I am trying to verify this, and being able to get the accurate information. It will allow you to be more informed, allow you to understand what are the possibilities with this technology, and also making sure they give that education back to us as well.
That's really important. Super, super. Steve, you paint quite a picture of this accelerating loop of binary exploitation, vulnerability discovery, and so forth. Do you think binary exploitation will continue to be possible in the future? Will ethical hacking continue to be a viable career path? Will these loops get so small that humans aren't involved?
Yeah, and that's a great question and a hard question to answer. I remember a long time ago, like 20 years ago, people would say, are we going to be able to do things like buffer overflows a couple years from now? And every couple of years, the same question has been asked. And now we're on Windows 11, if you talk about that operating system, and it's still possible, but thanks to mitigations there, a lot of times they're not exploitable. If you watch things like the CanSec West Pwn to Own challenge, and you look at all the different types of exploits that are launched and the vulnerabilities that are discovered, they're extremely complex. And as I mentioned earlier, the automation of bug discovery and the assistance with AI is great. It will get better, but there's still going to be required that human element, as far as I can see, to be able to get into the context of the very unique scenario that ends up being each particular bug. So yes, I do think that it's still going to be possible, but it's going to get harder and harder, which goes back to what Johannes said a bit, which is as things get harder, who's going to know how to do this stuff? So someone has to keep up with the machines, or you know where that goes. You've seen the Terminator.
That's right. I've seen that movie. Right. Right. So Johannes, hey, thanks. You know, there are 5 topics that we cover here, right? And we have 4 panelists. So Johannes did double duty, right? So thank you for doing the tech debt. But I have a question for you on your other topic, which is establishing remote identity. So you mentioned, you know, how customers resist stringent ID verification schemes. None of us likes that, right? But how can you overcome that resistance? In particular, if there's a regulation for Know Your Customer that requires establishing customer identity.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the mutual trust. So if you want to trust the customer also has to trust you, the organization, trying to establish that identity. Make clear why you're asking for that information, how you're dealing with that information, and it really doesn't help if the next day you're losing that picture of the passport they sent you. So good information security practice, I think, will help establish that mutual trust.
And I hope it becomes sort of a social trend that, hey, you have to establish that up front, right?
And like I said, it's sort of a little bit, maybe you can also leverage it sort of from other entities, kind of that federated identity kind of idea, if that can be spread out a little bit further, so you don't have to establish the identity with every organization from scratch.
Excellent point. Very good. Thank you. So Heather, I'd love to hear more from you about efforts in place to combat the threat that you're talking about, maybe especially associated with, you know, generative AI being applied there. It makes it so much more insidious with fake pictures.
Yeah. So there is the Report Act, which was just signed today.
Wow. Timely.
Yeah, timely. Perfect timing for me. Defiance Act is in place. At Celebrite, we have something called OFTA. It's Operation Find Them All, and it's about finding the people who are exploited, finding the people who are doing the crime, finding the people who are paying for it, and then finding help for them after the fact. So that's always a good one. NCMEC does a ton on this, from helping from the beginning to the end and trying to combat and make people more aware. The cyber tips really help. The fact that now with Report Act, that social networks have to report, before they didn't have to. So they could just kind of ignore it because they weren't legally required to, which I was quizzing Terrence on backstage.
Yes.
So I think those things in place will really help, but all the educational pieces that are available will really help combat this. I think the more educated we are, the better we will be.
Agreed.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Based off that scale we're seeing, like, how soon do you think this is going to be really in effect?
Not soon enough. I feel like legislation is constantly chasing the technology. And as Steve was just saying, like, it's advancing so quickly. We need to keep up. We need to do better. And even you, everyone can report it. If you see it, you can report it. It may not be real, but even AI is still harmful. It can be considered like
they
a
would
gateway
report that
drug.
to, you mentioned NCMEC. Do you want to spell out what that is for folks?
Yeah, NCMEC is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. If you go onto their website, ncmec.org, there's a ton of stuff. Celebrate site, you can go to OFTA and see that as well, but really good resources available for you.
So Terrence, I asked you before about, what does the average voter need to know about this? But let me follow up on what Heather was talking about and ask you this. What is one piece of advice that you could give to policymakers and tech leaders working to secure our elections in the age of AI? What would that one piece of advice be?
Do not forget who your audience is. We are in a more technical space right now, so a lot of people in this room and making these decisions have played with this technology, but the average person has not. They're going to be the recipient of it. They're going to be, oh my gosh, this is the first time I ever seen this image, forward to my friends. So understanding that is going to be your audience is how you work backwards. Looking at it from what is the average person going to believe? Not what is the person who is sitting behind the computer generating it, like they should know better. Well, yes, they should, but the recipient of it, do they know better? They're just on the receiving end. So that will be what I would advise them is to know.
Important principle to keep in mind. Yeah, for all of cybersecurity, I think, but especially for those leaders. So, hey, Steve, I have a question I want to ask of you, but then I'd love to get the other panelists' opinion on this too. Imagine you're a college student today, and you have an interest in cybersecurity. Which field within cybersecurity would you choose and why, given all of the acceleration you're talking about with respect to AI? So where do you go?
Yeah, that's a great question and an important question. I did a poll on Twitter recently, and I was very disappointed and saddened by the results, where a lot of the folks coming out of university and such were saying they've had a difficult time finding jobs. And one of the most important things that I've been trying to relay to people is when I was getting into information technology in general, and most of the people that I know who are mature in this area, we didn't start out in cybersecurity. We started out in some other role, like network engineering, systems administration, whatever it might be. And then once we had a solid understanding of the systems, then having that knowledge and going over to security made us a lot more effective because we not only understood the technology, but the business and everything else. So I think that you shouldn't be afraid of not going straight into security. You can apply your security knowledge and always use it, but just work for a little while in general IT before migrating your way over. And I think that that's going to be super helpful. And the other thing is just for students and for everyone, if there ever was a time that you shouldn't be complacent, it's now. Don't be complacent. Like with AI and everything, you should be leveraging this to be your best friend and to make you better.
That's really good. Other panelists, thoughts on that? You're talking to a college student, they're interested in cybersecurity, where should they focus?
I hear this one all the time,
Yeah.
actually. And chiming in on what Steve said, I started as an evidence technician. I needed to get my foot in the door. So don't be afraid that something is beneath you. And the truth is, you may hear buzzwords and think that's the thing I want to do, but it may not be your passion. So getting started somewhere, making smart friends, following what they do. Even at SANS, we offer so many little tidbits on free workshops. Try these workshops. See if you like them. See what motivates you, because that's what will change your career.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just don't focus on the latest shiny thing. And we have a lot of AI here. Welcome One. That was the password that caused or contributed to a major healthcare breach recently. Yeah. It's all too easy to get distracted. Focus on your basic application security, focus on basic network security, understand how systems work, and then have some fun with it by involving AI.
Good. Now I have a question for all the panelists, so be brief if you would. This whole field changes so fast. There's so many things happening so quickly, it's really hard to keep up. So what I'd like to ask each of you is what's one new resource you have found in the last year, so just 1 year, so you can't say Internet Storm Center, okay? But something you found in the last year.
Can I refine it?
You cannot refine it. You have to say something else. Within the last year, what's one new resource that helps keep you up with the onslaught of changes in the cybersecurity technology space? Steve, you're first.
Why? For me, honestly, it's not that easy of an answer. I like to follow people and identify who is working in a space that is something I want to know more about. I'll call out a name, for example, Will Pierce, who goes by MuHacks, worked at NVIDIA as the red team lead for AI. I wanted to learn more, so he left NVIDIA and has his own company called Fretnode.io, I believe. And just knowing that the leaders in the different spaces are moving around always, and they've got some kind of feed, whether it be GitHub or Twitter or something else, that you could just stay with those folks and really track what they're doing.
Good, good. Terrence?
For me, I just came across an app. I think its name proper is iKnowReader, but the actual name is not that important. But making my own RSS feed. I've been so reliant on the news applications, Medium, Artifact, whatever it was, but now I'm realizing like cybersecurity topics are the minority, whereas I'm building my own RSS where it's saying, here are all the sources I need to keep up with, and then letting those applications use their back-end AI to allow me to stay up to date and be able to search and do everything versus it all just being piled in my email and trying to do a
Love
search.
it. Build your own RSS feed. Great. Heather,
Yeah.
quickly?
I would steal Steve's, but no, in all seriousness, in the last year, we created a distro called Stump Us at Celebrate.com, and it enables anyone on the planet to send their threats, their issues, their concerns with cases, things that they can't solve directly in. So listening to that,
How do you spell that? Stumba?
Stump Us, like a tree stump.
Oh,
STUMP-US, yeah.
Got
So like
it.
a tree stump, you're a
Stump
stump,
us,
we're
I
here
got
to
it.
help you. But typically we don't know what it is, so we research it.
Yes. Last but not least, Dr. J.
Well, let's keep it short and simple. SecurityOnline.info is actually a site that I came across about a year ago. No idea who's behind it. It's a very basic site, really no ads, and has real good current information about vulnerabilities.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Folks, hey, let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you. We appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you next year. Enjoy the rest of RSA Conference. Take care.
Thank you.